Hello and welcome to this overview of the Advanced Audit and Assurance exam. Now, before you get started with your studies, it's worth just spending a few moments thinking about how this paper is going to be assessed. So on the screen you can see some information about the format of the exam, which is taken from the front pages of your First Intuition question bank. Now, the first thing to think about is the amount of time that you'll have to do the exam. So it's a computer-based exam which lasts for 3 hours and 15 minutes, which is the same as saying 195 minutes or 1.95 minutes per mark, as it's a 100-mark exam. It does sound like rather a long time, but I can assure you that when you get into the exam, the time will go very quickly. Now, the paper is broken down into two different sections. Section A is worth 50 marks, and this is a compulsory case study question. So the case study is always set in the context of planning an audit, and it could be the audit of a single company, it could be the audit of a group of companies, or it could be the audit of more than one client. And the 50 marks will be broken down into a number of requirements which will be set out in an email to you from the audit partner. Now, the topics that are commonly tested in question 1 are risk, together with audit procedures, plus some other topics such as ethics and professional issues. Now, also within the case study question, there will be 10 professional marks available, which will be awarded for a number of different competencies, which we'll come on to take a look at in just a couple of moments. Before we do that, let's talk quickly about Section B. So Section B is going to contain 2 questions, which are worth 25 marks each, and they will also contain some professional marks. There'll be 5 per question. And Section B questions can be on any part of the syllabus, although one of the questions in Section B will predominantly test the topics of audit completion and reporting. We'll start off with communication skills, and these ones are tested in Section A. Now, the requirement in Section A is always the same, in a sense that you will be asked to produce a set of briefing notes for the audit engagement partner or potentially a senior manager. Your role will be that of an audit manager. Now, in order to earn the communication marks, your briefing notes need to look the part or be suitable to send to a real-life audit partner. So, for example, they should have headings, subheadings, and a brief introduction which explains the content of the briefing notes and you can take from the requirements. Then your actual detailed answer should look professional. So, for example, you should be writing in short paragraphs. You should be using language that is suitable for an audit partner or senior manager, and also your writing should be clear and effective. You should also make sure you follow the requirements carefully, so don't waffle or go off at a tangent. Sometimes you're given specific instructions, so for example, you'll be told about issues to ignore, and if you don't follow those instructions, not only will you waste time and not earn technical marks, but also you'll forfeit some of these communication marks. Let's move on now to look at analysis and evaluation, which are a fundamental professional skill for auditors. Now, all of the questions in the Advanced Audit exam will be based around a scenario. And something that you will need to do is to understand the context of the scenario. So the question could relate to planning an audit, or maybe we are later on, perhaps at the completion or the reporting stage. So you need to make sure that the points that you're making in your answer are relevant to the stage that the audit is at. Your answer should also be relevant to the context of the company that you're auditing. So, for example, it could be a group of companies or it could be a single company. Analysis is something that you can demonstrate through using the information that you're provided with in the scenario. And often in the case study question in section A, you'll be given some financial information that you can use to perform analytical procedures. So sometimes there will be marks available for ratio calculations. What you also need to be able to do is to interpret any calculations that you perform and draw appropriate conclusions or suggest appropriate actions. Sometimes in questions, you may need to ask for further information, so data might be omitted, or perhaps you need to carry out some further analysis based on this missing data. So being able to spot that will also pick you up marks for analysis and evaluation. Then finally, your answer needs to demonstrate a balanced appraisal and the appropriate course of action as a result of that. So for example, sometimes in a question you will come across a situation where there's a material misstatement and you'll be asked to appraise or evaluate the implications of this for the auditor's report. So coming up with an appropriate response will earn you professional marks in this respect. We'll now turn our attention to skepticism and judgment, which are also really important skills for auditors. So these skills are going to be very useful in the risk question in section A of the exam, where you'll be asked to evaluate significant risks. And here you will get credit for prioritizing the most significant risks first and devoting more time and space in your answer to these. In other types of questions, possibly in section B of the exam, you might be expected to review the audit work of a junior team member and consider whether that work is sufficient. So you will need to use your judgment here to decide whether actually more work needs to be done or whether the work that's already been performed is sufficient to support our opinion. Then the final professional skill is commercial acumen. And when the examiners develop questions for the advanced audit paper, they aim to make their scenarios commercially realistic for different types of organisation. And a type of question where you have lots of opportunity to demonstrate commercial acumen is where in section A you might be asked to evaluate business risks. And here you'll pick up professional marks for giving some good explanations of what the impact of a particular risk might be on the client's business, and also prioritizing the risks that you think are most significant. And as well as thinking about your clients as a business, you also need to be able to think about the audit firm as a business. So for example, you could get a question on client acceptance where you have to consider the commercial aspects of whether it's appropriate to accept a client. For example, considering the reputation of the client or the fees that a client might generate.